Man, this Providence Schools thing needs a smart guy. We got one.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
You know, there was a day not too long ago, I think, that if Congress, any branch decided to condemn or sanction or censure the President of the United States, it would be shocking to the system, and it would be the discussion at the water cooler everywhere. Not these days. Welcome in. We'll discuss that for a moment here, and then we'll get into the solutions for the Providence schools. Gary Sasse, longtime budget director, administration guy, leader of the, executive director of the Leadership Institute at Bryant University, penned off an op-ed with former Mayor Joe Paolino that is worth digging into. And of course, I love getting into Gary's mind because it is deep, it is thoughtful, and he understands process. And unfortunately, not a lot of people understand process to come up with solutions. Do we have too much process in this particular situation? We'll see. So we'll get into that right away. Anyway, the headline here, we condemn the president. You know, it's almost like yawn for the country, but here's the network's coverage of it.
The House approved a measure condemning President Trump's tweets about 4 congresswomen of color, collectively known as the Squad. The president's tweets urged the women to go back where they came from, even though all but one was born in the U.S.
These comments from the White House are disgraceful and disgusting.
The 4-page resolution, quote, strongly condemns President Trump's racist comments that have legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color.
At the highest level of government, there's no room for racism.
The 240-187 vote closely followed party lines, with only 4 Republicans and 1 independent in favor. Afterward, the president took to Twitter to praise GOP members who voted against the measure, writing, "Great to see how unified the Republican Party was on today's vote."
We all know politics is a contact sport, but it's about time we lowered the temperature.
Earlier Tuesday, Mr. Trump was asked where the Squad members should go if they left the U.S.
It's up to them. Go wherever they want, or they can stay. But they should love our country.
The drama on Capitol Hill continued after last night's vote. Once the resolution passed, Texas Democrat Al Green filed articles of impeachment against the president.
The articles of impeachment against the president put the speaker in a jam. She didn't want that to happen, no doubt. There's no way that the president's going to be impeached on this. So who's kidding who here? He had to do what he had to do. Fine. You know, I don't think we got to. In as much as we don't get our panties in a bundle at all about what the president says or does, seems to be, we shouldn't get our panties in a bundle over how Democrats react. It's simple as that. We are in a new level of funky situation though right now, and when you see the obvious message that Donald Trump has been sending in the past and did send via Twitter and verbally over the last few days, and you see that barely a boo from the Republican Party, 4 members of Congress actually came on board with this whole thing, you realize that we are in a place where there's no place for middle ground on things of humankind, common sense, and how we deal with each other. I don't know what to say anymore other than that. It's just one of those things where the next election may resolve this, and it may not, but it's going to ride on it. There's no doubt in my mind. And then, of course, the Squad now. The Squad, I mean, this is, in as much as they've been victimized by this, talk about taking opportunities.
What did you think when you heard the tweet? I'm dealing with the biggest bully I've ever had to deal with in my lifetime, and trying to push back on that and trying to do the job that we all have been sent here to do, which is centered around the people at home. This is a distraction.
Do you feel enough Republicans have spoken up against the president?
Absolutely not.
What message does that send?
The normalization of it. The fact that it's against our core American values, that they're choosing him over country.
Listen, they make a great point. And they've given themselves a chance to actually make a great point on discourse rather than on policy, because on policy they ought to get Fs. But you know, the empathy that they are probably generating from a lot of people who may have voted for Donald Trump and just hate all of this is going to be an interesting play. Those four, I've listened to them individually on the issues and on their politics, and I will tell you, they are not the varsity. But right now, they're front and center. And he did that. He did that. All righty. Coming home, we have a new interim superintendent for Providence. Fran Gallo is a veteran. Here's the report.
As Providence rebounds from a devastating report regarding its schools, the school board has announced its pick to take over leadership of the district, and she's no stranger.
I left Providence Schools, and when I did, I had a marvelous relationship with the teachers, the union, with all the employees, and I hope that we can capitalize on that.
Dr. Fran Gallo worked for Providence Schools from 2002 to 2007, but she's probably most remembered for her role after that, serving as the superintendent in Central Falls.
We're at a 40-to-1 ratio of people telling me, you're doing the right thing.
This clip from an episode of Newsmakers in 2010 was recorded just before Gallo announced all teachers at Central Falls High School would be laid off. It was part of a turnaround plan for the district.
If we're going to change the culture, it had to happen.
The district later reached a deal with the union to rehire those teachers.
Once we got on the road, we were able to make long strides and inroads into professional development and curriculum building.
Next week, State Education Commissioner Angelica Infante Green is slated to announce plans involving some type of state intervention in light of the Johns Hopkins report detailing violence in classrooms, crumbling buildings, and consistently low test scores. Problems that Gallo would inherit.
It is a daunting task, and I think it's absolutely imperative that I put on my listening ears and that I try to establish a sense of respect where kindness and encouragement will be consistently understood.
And know this, the mayor of the city went ahead and did this on his own. And I'm not sure what level of discourse he had with the new commissioner, who is, all in on trying to resolve and to try to cultivate some kind of a plan for a shot at improving the Providence schools. I'm a fan of Fran Gallo. She is a tough cookie. She's not afraid. I wonder what her investment is at this particular point, right? She is certainly in the twilight of her career. She just came out of retirement, and I'm not even sure what the constitutional and statutory issues are in terms of, more statutory than constitutional, of course, in terms of how much work she can actually do. I'm not sure that one hand knows what the other hand is doing. Here's a headline that says, here's how the hands can come together. This is how we ought to try to clap our hands or integrate our fingers or put them together or something like that. Gary Sasse, somebody I rely on for smart, clear, critical thinking. You and Paolino got together for this.
Yes.
What was that all about?
Well, we met at a social occasion. We started to discuss the school issue. And about 45 minutes later, we agreed to meet the following week to put our ideas on paper and circulate them.
He's a good guy. He loves the city. He loves the city. So you two came together. I'm guessing that he was more the idea guy in this op-ed and you're more the technical guy, but I don't know. I guess it's not really important as to who has more weight in the op-ed. What's more important is to talk about what's in the op-ed. So give me, if you will, just an executive summary, and then we're going to dig into what you're trying to say.
Okay,
here.
what the op-ed says, just to the elevator speech, that it's in the best interest of Providence kids. Let's talk about kids and students, for the state to take over the system, to be responsible on a temporary basis for the complete control, care, and management of Providence schools. The second point, we recognize it's not a panacea. There's no organizational structure that is a panacea. But given what's happened in the Providence schools over a period of time, we feel they forfeited their right to run the schools until things can be fixed up. That's the bottom line.
Simple. All right, when we come back, how do you do it? Stay with us.
Look, we have a real problem. You're hearing it from parents who are beyond frustrated. You're hearing it from teachers who feel unsafe in the classroom. You're hearing, we had a forum with students, with kids, and they feel like we're letting them down, and they're right. So there's a lot of work to do. I knew we had a problem. I think it's worse than even I realized, and it's an urgent situation, and we have to be bold.
You know, I think that is a really interesting comment by the governor. Couldn't agree more, right? No. Couldn't agree more. Words, action, space between them, right?
Right, and to be bold, you got to make firm decisions. So the worst thing that can happen is for some kind of lukewarm oversight. You know, where the state gets involved and they oversee what the city's doing, and that's like Solomon splitting the baby. Nothing happens. So you have to come down on one side or the other. Either the city can fix the problem with state supervision, or you don't have confidence that they can. The current system hasn't worked. The governor was right. It's worse than other people recognized. We need bold action, and so we think a special master should be appointed. Now, the success of the special master is going to be totally dependent upon the capabilities and the leadership of that person.
You kind of slid that in. Special master, define it.
A special master would be have complete control over the school department in the city of Providence, and would usurp the powers that are currently given to the school department and to the school board.
How does the special master's authority get created?
Well, it's already been created. Several years ago, I think when the late Paul Crowley was in the legislature, there was the infamous Article 31 and had a section on intervention. And so I think, others may disagree, that the power for the commissioner to intervene already exists. It was used in Hope High School, so we have a precedent, you know, for it. And so it really involves the commissioner invoking her authority under that law, doing, I hope, a national search to get the right person in here that has the right leadership skills to be a special master, giving him or her the complete responsibility for the care, control, and management of the schools.
And I'm listening. I'm wondering though. There seems to be a current of concern that there is, you know, under the current state statute, maybe inclusive of this act, maybe exclusive of this act, that there is a 30, 60, 90, 120-day work it out hearings, public opinion process that goes along with a state takeover of the city's schools. What's your recollection, interpretation, and understanding of that versus what you are talking about?
My recollection, you know, is not clear. I think the commissioner does have the powers. If it is the fact that the time period is limited to an unrealistic time period, 30, 60, or 90 days, then there's only one thing to do, is get the legislature back here tomorrow and put in place whatever remedies and corrective actions are needed so we can fix this problem up once and for all.
Do you mind if I sing amen? Because that is exactly what's necessary here. And what I'm really, really puzzled over is that we haven't even made that articulation yet. Now, the commissioner is going to go to her board next week and lay out the proposal. We don't know what that is going to be. The governor's rhetoric is, you know, bold, bold, bold. She's calling for a special session of the legislature to ratify a contract with IGT. I'm not going to judge her on that. She sees that as highly necessary. She, as treasurer of the state, you know, did a pretty good job of forcing a special session for pension reform. I agree with you. How hard would it be to get the General Assembly back in to enact whatever quick work mechanisms are necessary for the commissioner to take this thing over?
It shouldn't be, you know, very hard at all. And I would wait for an opinion from legal counsel for the Department of Education, you know, saying they have the authority or they don't. If they don't, the legislature comes back and gives them the authority.
Simple.
That's it.
Simple. All right. So if it's that, you know, when it becomes that simple, what should they do with the simple? Next. So there's no doubt that those beautiful kids in Providence really need an intervention in terms of their entire physicality, Gary. I mean, at the very beginning, we got to get rid of rats, we got to get rid of asbestos, we got to get rid of all those things, we got to make those buildings safe. Which comes first, chicken or the egg, in terms of your special master state takeover plan, which I do want to delineate because I think we have to have more conversation about how that works. Yeah. Do you think that the physical plants and whatever resources or extra money has got to be found somewhere ought to be the commissioner's purview or the mayor's purview? Because right now the commissioner has said publicly that the mayor wants to own that, yet he has shown no message, instinct, seeming understanding of how urgent that problem seems to be.
Well, school opens in less than 50 days in Providence. The buildings, as I understand it, are owned by the city, not by the school department. I think the commission has to...
I think for regular citizens, that's a distinction without a difference.
But administratively, you have to, the commission basically has to tell the mayor that this is going to happen to get these buildings in shape. And if you can't do it, I'll put somebody down here that can do it. But we're in a funny transition space because if the special master could be appointed tomorrow, that's not a problem. Because the special master would have control over what's done, how it's done, and when it's done.
How would that jibe with the new appointment, soon to be confirmed interim superintendent?
I don't understand how that would work. I think there could be an interim superintendent who would be essentially in an advisory position to the special master. But you can't have it both ways. Either you think the city can fix the problem or the city needs help and can't fix the problem. We've come to the conclusion that there's been enough rope out there. They've forfeited their right to run the system. The commissioner needs to intervene and appoint a special master. And how that affects an appointment of an interim, I use the word interim with quotes, superintendent shouldn't concern any of us.
Your conversation with me here is so important because inasmuch as the governor has said what you heard her say earlier, she's also in the same breath talking about, and so the bold plan will be my commissioner's leadership in concert with the mayor, and all of that, all the thematicness of this is not what you are speaking about, but it is what you're worried about, which is that half-y, everyone's kind of in each other's situation and shadow, and it's all this kind of no one's really in charge, no one is the Spartan in this whole situation.
Can you imagine General Eisenhower preparing the plan to invade Normandy, D-Day, and then having to sit down with the British and the French and the Polish and whoever was involved and negotiating? He had to keep them informed. He had to work with them. But that's the model. He was the commander-in-chief. The special master is the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief can't operate effectively unless there's good communications with the city, there's a working relationship, whether it's an interim superintendent or other people that are in the school administration. That's part of the skill and leadership of a person that comes in to run the system. They can't do it in isolation. They have to work with who's there. But they, at the end of the day, they're the Eisenhower. They're not the Montgomery.
Mm. Specifically, well, by the way, here's the perspective of one of many that we played this for you last night, of Mayor Elorza as he talks about process here.
So on the school infrastructure issues, we've been on top of that. On the conditions inside of our schools, remember I just mentioned, I've been calling for the need for transformation in our schools for well over 2 years now. And the goal was to start that transformation process through the budget negotiation, the contract negotiations. And I came to realize the state rules, state laws around contract arbitration are just so weighted against cities that it's impossible to make the change that we need. We don't have the tools, we don't have the authority, we don't have the power to make that transformational change. And, once that reality settled in, that's when the conversations with the state really picked up of the only other option that we have is asking the state to come in and invoke those additional powers.
Well, he's full of it, okay, because he's been fighting the state coming in over this whole thing continually. He has argued that he needs to be the physical plant guy. He went ahead and he hired an interim superintendent. Notwithstanding Fran Gallo's expertise and great track record, went ahead and did that. And how dare he mix in the legitimate conversations and worries about evergreen contracts and that legislative garbage that went down, and the governor's acquiesced to that, so she's speaking out of both ends of her political mouth. That notwithstanding, what does that have to do with rats and asbestos and fixing the school buildings in some kind of emergency triage? My answer is no. What's yours? Nothing. What's yours?
But if you look back, so kids in Providence have not always been taught by effective teachers. Kids in Providence have not had access to current academic resources and materials, and they've not been in environmentally friendly schools, clean and safe, what you were just defining. And so you need a holistic approach to deal with it. But before you do that, you need to make certain that the schools are in the best possible condition, and you're not going to turn around decades of neglect in 50 days, but you need to do the best you can to get the schools in the best possible shape.
Habitable.
So when the kids come back, they're
not living in squalor. That's all we're looking for. And he's trying to blame contract negotiations as something that has prevented him from doing that. Specifically, the special master would do what?
Well, the special master would deal with the school schedule. He or she would have complete autonomy over the budget. He would have complete autonomy over altering or replacing curriculum consistent with with state law. He would have autonomy for job-embedded professional development. And this is really important because we have to figure out a way to work with the unions and renegotiate some of the work rules in the contract. There's something called professional facilitators. Harvard has a win-win program in professional collective bargaining and facilitation. And we need to bring those kinds of people in to negotiate a student-centered collective bargaining agreement, because there is opinion in the state of Rhode Island, in the North Providence case. And if I could take just a second to read this.
We only have about a minute, so go ahead.
It says, nonetheless, a basic rule of law of school committees are not at liberty to bargain away the powers and responsibilities with respect to the essence of their educational mission. So that these things can be facilitated, but the special master needs to do that. You need to bring a special master in to deal with the maintenance issue. You need to bring a special master in to make decisions on how you're going to empower principals and have more local control over schools. That's not, I don't have confidence that the city can do all of that. All of that is on the plate. Special master has to work with the existing school administration, not going to be replaced tomorrow, has to work with the existing professional staff. But the powers that are vested in that person can give us the best chance of success.
And you believe the statutes allow for it, and if there's dispute, they ought to re-legislate it. I've only got 30 seconds.
Yes, I would ask for forgiveness before I'd ask for permission. And I definitely would use Article 31, intervention, if somebody challenged it and I needed a legislative fix. I would expect the governor to get that legislation back tomorrow.
All right. Thanks for your notes, Gary. Real important stuff. Final word when we come back. We're going to work on this theme of this version of state control until somebody else comes up with a different one. Stay tuned next week. Reportedly, it's all coming down, but it seems to me like it's pretty fluid right now. And the backdoor fighting is pretty significant. Talk to you on the radio tomorrow at 3, 2 on WPRL. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.